is there an element of your world as doctors that there are different religions? Because if we put 5 doctors there, they all have fancy degrees, they all could believe in 5 different things, and they're all convincing. So who do we believe? One minute do we go this route of a diet? One minute do we go that route of a diet? One minute we go. What can we do as the consumer to make sure we're being fed the right advice?
I think the best thing to do is use a bit of common sense, and you have to think and you have to look through the test of time. So if something has withstood the test of time, then you know it's fairly decent advice. Okay, so you look back at the 70s, and I always choose the 70s because this is a time where there's not a lot of there's not widespread hunger in the United States. It's, it's fairly advanced. I mean, but there's at the same time that there's relative availability of food, there's no obesity. And the question is why? Like, what did they do differently then compared to what we're doing now? And of course, the big change came in 1977, which was the change to eat a very low fat diet, right? So in 1977, the dietary guidelines for Americans came out, and all of a sudden, all of us were told that we should eat less fat, which was the equivalent of telling people to eat more refined carbohydrates. So if you look back at the first food pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, there's bread and there's rice and there's potatoes, and it's like eat 7 or 8 servings a day sort of thing, right? 7 to 11, I think, servings a day. And it's like, well, who thinks eating 7 slices of white bread a day is slimming? Like, it's not very slimming, because now we look back and say, okay, well, eating a bunch of French fries and potato chips and, bread is not very good. And you can say, well, those are all refined foods as well, but that's what was on the pictures, right? Was the white bread and so on. So you have to say, okay, well, that was one of the big changes that happened. So if we simply go back to a more traditional way of eating, are we going to be able to sort of regain this sort of effortless maintenance of our weight? And you'd have to say, well, that's probably true. So this sort of whole low-fat thing that came out of the 1970s was the big change. Prior to that, of course, people ate fat, they ate cheese, they eat eggs and all this sort of stuff. And it's interesting because, again, if you look at the big scientific data of the time, in the 70s, people ate 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And by the 2004, when you look at the big surveys, most Americans were eating closer to 6 times a day. So breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack. So again, big changes in both what we ate and when we ate. Now, they were related in some sense. That is, people who are eating a lot of refined carbohydrates, you eat, if you ate steak and eggs in the morning, you're pretty full until lunchtime. If you ate 2 slices of white bread and jam, you're sort of ravenous by 10:30 and looking for a low-fat muffin. So people started eating much more frequently. So the thing is that what I'm talking about mostly is going back to sort of a 1970s style diet, which of course people had been eating all the way prior to that, which is not a low-fat diet, which is basically eating natural foods, eating the fat, like, this whole thing about eating low fat, cutting out the butter and cutting out the cream and stuff, that didn't exist before the 1970s, because people didn't care about that stuff so much. And eating fewer times in a day, cutting out the snacks. And then again, if you wanted to lose weight, then you try to change either what you ate or when you ate, including the whole idea of fasting, which became a really dirty word sometime, I think, in the 1990s. And is because everybody started eating 6, 7 times a day. And then you started to hear the advice from dietitians, oh, you should eat 6 small meals a day. It's like, okay, prior to 1970s, nobody ate 6 meals a day. At no time in history did anybody eat 6 times a day, right? You think somebody in, the 1500s, some monk who's busy all day praying and working the fields is going to have a snack and, bring out his granola bar. He didn't do that, right? That wasn't something that we did. So if we start introducing these sort of newfangled diets, like the low-fat diet, like eating 6 times a day, well, those haven't withstood the test of time. as opposed to eating 3 meals a day, natural foods. And if you want to sort of push it, well, you can skip a meal. Because remember, in the 1970s, if you were a naughty boy, you got sent to your bed without dinner. You basically fasted for 20 hours from noon until
That's a good
breakfast
point.
the next day.
Yeah.
And nobody died. Nobody had any problems, right? It was fine. Yes, you're a little hungry and hopefully you learned your lesson. But that was it. That was it. So if you wanted to lose weight, you could simply change one of these levers and say, you know what, I can fast because if I don't eat, what's going to happen? Well, my body is going to be forced to use the calories that have been stored, which is body fat. That's perfect. So then you say, okay, well, fasting, that's interesting. Is it a newfangled idea? No. It's only been done since the beginning of time. I mean, you look at the Bible, you look at the, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism,
There's no question. Yeah.
everybody has fasting, right? The Greek Orthodox Church, Mormonism, everybody fasts. So it's not something that people can't do. It's been proven over and over and over that they can do it. And what's interesting is that up to that point, it's considered, up to the 80s and 90s, it's considered a very healthy practice. Even when there's no obesity, people are like, yeah, it's a great thing. You cleanse out your body, you feel great, right? It's not super fun, but it's there for you, right? In Ramadan, you have a month of fasting. So, and then after the 1990s, it just falls off. Like everybody thinks it's like the worst thing you can possibly do to your body, even if you're 400 pounds. I'm like, what do you think body fat is there for? It's there for you to use as a source of energy if you have nothing to eat. So if you're fasting, you're basically feeding yourself through your own body fat, which is literally the reason we have body fat. It's not there for looks. It's there for you to use if you have nothing else.